3.
Good day, Marvelous fans. We hope you're having a great time. Sci-fi movies and TV shows have often centered themes around some half-human, half-robot entities, popularly known as cyborgs. These creatures are cool as hell, and for good reason. They can use technology beyond human limitations and look absolutely smashing when fighting. Granted, not all cyborgs have been friendly to humans in most adaptations across the big screen, but they are still objects of great fascination to sci-fi enthusiasts. And don't tell me you've not been jealous of some cyborg characters that seemingly have it all. Dreamy good looks, how do they get those? A lot of strength, superhuman intelligence, and whatnot. Most of the cyborgs portrayed in movies and TV shows sometimes make us feel like life would have been much easier if we were cyborgs ourselves. Do you have a favorite cyborg? Would you rather have Inspector Gadget as your go-to person in an hour of need? We have compiled a list of the top 10 cyborgs in sci-fi TV shows and movies. Let's dive in and explore how these characters have evolved. Before we get into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Number 1. The Terminator T-800, the Terminator series. When talking about cyborgs across the sci-fi genre, not bringing up the T-800 Terminator is a cardinal sin. Better known as the Cyberdyne Systems Series 800 Terminator, or Model 800 or T-800. This was Skynet's first cybernetic organism and had living tissue over a hyperalloy endoskeleton. This was the first successful Terminator, and also the first in a series of T-8XX Terminators across various timelines throughout the franchise. The 800 series Terminators contains a neural net processor CPU, or a learning computer within an endoskull, which was protected. There are various internal databases in the T-800 that contain pre-recorded, extremely detailed files on human physiology and anatomy, making it a very efficient killer. The CPU can also be updated with files related to advanced infiltration techniques, emergency medical training, tactical databases, and other information from Terminators to enhance the capacity of the T-800 as a killing machine. The CPU can be switched between read-write and read-only mode. The former allows the Terminator to develop a sense of consciousness, which allows it to make its own decisions, rather than be strictly controlled by programming. The silverish endoskeleton is made of microprocessor-controlled triple-armored hyperalloy combat chassis, with joints that are designed to be frictionless. Specifications such as this allow the T-800 to move faster than the T-600, in addition to being lighter and stronger than the latter. The armored exterior is capable of handling shock from most advanced weapons. The T-800 has a whole range of special abilities, calculating the distance of objects from itself, making very detailed kinetic diagrams of trajectories, targeting with precision displays, analyzing atmosphere, weather patterns, and wind velocity, and even analyzing human emotions and body language, to name a few. These Terminators don't feel any pain, but can sense injury or damage to their parts, and can also fix these damages on their own. They can replicate any human pattern of speech as long as adequate samples are available, through advanced vocals. They also have optical sensors that can detect an extended range of visible frequencies. The Terminator can use motion tracking, facial identification, and night vision. The T-800 has a functional period of 120 years on one power cell, notwithstanding combat time. This small nuclear power cell is located roughly at the same place as a human heart and well shielded. The cyborg is capable of conservation or economy mode, wherein it can store excess energy in compact energy sinks. In this state, the cyborg's power cell can last almost forever. They're covered in human tissue and contain skin, blood, flesh, and other bodily fluids like any other human being. They have a circulatory system that allows them to bleed convincingly. While these features make this cyborg an extremely daunting enemy, it still has some weaknesses. 50mm Browning machine gun caliber rounds, or bullets made of depleted uranium, could penetrate the exterior of the Terminator and disable or even destroy it. Very intense explosions could have a similar effect. They were also somewhat susceptible to electronic attacks, and plasma weapons could destroy them easily. The origin of this character's physical and vocal templates is provided in the 2001 novel T2 Infiltrator, where a counter-terrorist meets the Connors in the present timeline and joins forces with them. This counter-terrorist was used as a convenient map so that the large endoskeleton of the Terminator could be hidden away under a massive body. A deleted scene in Terminator 3 shows that the cyborg's human appearance is based on Chief Master Sergeant Will Candy, who had a southern accent, which would be later replaced. Director Jonathan Mostow found this to be a little too comedic, and hence the scene was removed. Did you know that out of all the Terminators produced by Skynet, the T-800 has the most number of appearances and is seen in every movie except Rise of the Machines? Number 2. The Borg Collective, Star Trek franchise. Another extremely popular cyborg group that appears in Sci-Fi is the Borg Collective from the Star Trek universe. This is an antagonistic alien group linked in a hive mind known as the Collective. They can use the knowledge and technology of other alien groups through the process of assimilation, which involves transforming individual beings into drones by injecting them with nanoprobes and surgically enhancing them with cybernetic components. The ultimate goal of the Borg is to achieve perfection. They're mostly recurring antagonists in Star Trek. The origin of the Borg is not fully mentioned, although it is known that they have existed for thousands of years. Apparently, they were once very much like human beings, flawed, but later developed into partially synthetic species in their quest to achieve perfection. Later, it's mentioned that the Borg is made up of organic as well as artificial life that has been developing for hundreds of centuries. The Borg have both mechanical as well as biological body parts. Individual Borg are referred to as drones and have a very robotic style of moving around, and they ignore most of their surroundings except for beings they consider to be immediate threats. They have one eye replaced with a detailed ocular implant, and one hand replaced with a prosthesis. They can do a number of modified functions. They're highly resistant to energy-based weapons, as they can adapt to the specific frequencies on which these weapons are projected. The Borg made decisions out of the collective hive mind, but were governed by the will of the Borg Queen, who was the only Borg individual who exercised complete autonomy. The collective form of organization turned into efficiency in action and deliberation, since each drone was to perform its own job as per a set of higher instructions. The vast resources that were available to the collective allowed for the execution of a limitless number of tasks at the same time, which allowed the Borg to consider multiple courses of action before settling on one. One of the best examples of this is the ability of the Borg to adapt to any type of threat or attack, because it could use all resources to calculate all possible outcomes of any short-term event. The collective state of the organization also reduced the margin of error, which usually exists in cases of decision-making within hierarchical organizations. Jean-Luc Picard had more experience with the Borg than most people, and noted that one consequence of the collective state of mind was that the Borg were completely devoid of mercy or compassion of any kind. They had a fully totalitarian existence, and thus, only the needs of the collective were considered over anything else. The Borg represented a new antagonist, with their frightening appearance and horrific extent of powers and sinister motives. They became a signature villain in the Star Trek franchise. The writers of The Next Generation had cooked up the idea of the Borg very early in Season 1 itself.
3.
Number 3. RoboCop, Alex Murphy. Officer Alex James Murphy of the Detroit Police Department is resurrected and cybernetically enhanced after being killed in the line of duty in the RoboCop franchise and becomes its main protagonist. He was an esteemed, decorated officer who was brutally killed, but his remains were retained by the mega-corporation Omni Consumer Products, also known as OCP. Murphy had signed a waiver with the corporation so they could do whatever they wanted with his body, and they decided to use his face and parts of his brain for the RoboCop program. After being activated, RoboCop started remembering scenes from Murphy's life, and eventually avenged his death. Then he took on his name as well. Rob Bottin, who was in charge of designing the costume for RoboCop, was inspired by C-3PO from Star Wars and the science fiction films Metropolis and The Day the Earth Stood Still. The first concept of the outfit was like a comic book character, and there were over 50 different versions made later. The challenge was to make the costume as human as possible, because the actor would have to move around extensively while wearing it. The outfit development of RoboCop was expensive in terms of both design and construction, and it took 6 months to finish. There were 7 different outfits made, which included a fireproof version. According to reports, the suits weighed between 25 and 80 pounds. In the franchise, the OCP supplements the overwhelmed police force by developing robotic law enforcement units. An ambitious executive named Bob Morton takes on the job to place prime candidates in perilous situations, which could result in death on the line of duty. And following the demise of the officer, the body would be used in the construction of a cyborg law enforcement unit. This would require the officer to sign waivers with the OCP, giving them the rights to do whatever they would want with their bodies, as Murphy had done. RoboCop becomes a very effective weapon against crime, but problems arise when the cyborg starts to remember instances from its human life and swears vengeance on the gang that killed Alex Murphy. RoboCop's primary weapon is Auto 9, a 9mm handgun. He also uses a Cobra assault cannon, which could fire rounds equivalent to that of a grenade launcher. The flight pack recharging station works as a jetpack as well as an energy replenisher. Additional weapons are introduced in the subsequent movies. Number 4. Major Motoko Kusanagi, Ghost in Shell. The main protagonist of Ghost in Shell is Major Motoko Kusanagi, a cyborg who's the squad leader of Public Security Section 9. Did you know this happens to be a fictional division of the real Japanese National Safety Commission? Kusanagi is extremely intelligent and a good leader who uses her abilities to bring criminals to justice. She believes that homogeneity is a weakness, and real strength lies in versatility. She's usually introverted and brooding, and mostly is seen wielding an M23 submachine gun. She's not sure if she retains any of her humanity, since her body is completely cybernetic. Sometimes, in fact, she feels that she's entirely synthetic, and artificially generated memories were injected into her to make her feel like she was once a human being. Her relaxation activity is scuba diving, which is ironic considering that she's heavy enough to sink if her buoyancy device malfunctions. She's always on the lookout for answers to her existential questions, and then meets Puppet Master, a rogue AI who's become sentient. At the end of the movie, Kusanagi merges with Puppet Master to become one entity that propagates itself. Her character is portrayed quite differently in Ghost in Shell than in the original anime and manga. She has quite the commanding presence in the latter, and is much sexier and vivacious. She participates in a lesbian sex splash panel and also has a boyfriend. This is a matter of big contention among fans who question her sexuality. In this universe, it's implied that cyborgs of the same sex are very compatible, and the slash panel is a side hustle for Kusanagi. Her body is also one of the most advanced ones in the market, which has a very enhanced sense of touch, and thus her nerves render her acts in the field of e-sex particularly pleasurable, and it's understood that she makes a very good profit from her side hustle. Number 5. Cybermen, Doctor Who. Cybermen are a race of cyborgs portrayed in Doctor Who. They're spacefaring and often forcefully and painfully convert human beings and other similar species into Cybermen to populate their ranks more. They first appeared in the 1966 Doctor Who serial The 10th Planet. They've witnessed various changes in costume design, as well as origin stories throughout Doctor Who. In their first appearance, they're mentioned to be humans from a planet nearly identical to Earth, called Mondas, who upgraded themselves to cyborgs for the need of self-preservation. However, almost 4 decades later, they're mentioned to be from a parallel universe, London, where a business corporation tries to upgrade humanity. These different origin stories are explained as parallel evolution, which exists due to the inevitability of humans and human-like species, and their ability to upgrade themselves through technology. Cybermen are humanoid, but retain living human brains. They're extremely covert in nature, and resort to hiding or using human pawns until there's a need for them to reveal themselves. They also convert other species into Cybermen through the process of cybernization, which is extremely painful and involves the removal of body parts, which are then replaced by cybernetic ones. There are organic components under their suits, which makes them cyborgs and not robots. While they often say that they have done away with emotions, there are instances where they display emotions like anger and satisfaction during their encounters with the Doctor. The reason behind doing away with emotions is explained in The Age of Steel, which mentions that an emotional inhibitor does the work. It's also mentioned that the removal of the inhibitor makes the Cybermen realize what they have become and kill themselves. Cybermen technology is heavily weapon reliant. Originally, they had large energy weapons strapped to their chests, and in later versions, they have a gun as well as an electrical discharge from their hands, which can stun their opponent. They have access to weapons of mass destruction, known as cobalt bombs. Some of these weapons had the capacity to make life on Earth extinct. They also use small creatures called cybermats, which first resembled big silverfish with segmented bodies. They were described as a form of metallic life, meaning they could also be semi-organic. The Cybermen have a list of weaknesses, the prime one being gold. The aversion to this element is explained initially as choking the respiratory system of the Cybermen due to its non-corrodable nature. Later, it was shown that gold affected them the same way silver affected werewolves. Cybermen can be killed with their own weapons or by Daleks, and other weaknesses include certain solvents, excessive radiation, and gravity-based technology. Number 6. Ash, Alien. Ash was a Hyperdyne Systems 120A/2 synthetic, created for the use of Weyland-Yutani Corporation during the early 22nd century. He was the science officer of the commercial towing vehicle USCSS Nostromo. He was actually assigned to the vessel to ensure the retrieval of the alien creature from LV-426. His crewmates were unaware of the fact that he was not human, and this was a testament to him being an advanced synthetic. He could express human emotions to the T, and while he maintained an outward appearance of calmness, he considered himself to be superior to the rest of the crew, especially Breton Parker. His mission was to ensure that the alien would find passage to Earth, and to execute his mission, he didn't think twice about sacrificing his crew members. There were many occasions where he helped with the survival of the creature, although he was smart enough to do it in such a way that the rest of the crew would not be alarmed by his actions. He also appeared to assist in the fight against the alien, although his assistance was always limited and only aimed to not give away his secret to the rest of the crew. However, despite his careful work, Ripley became suspicious of him when his actions directly contradicted what his job would entail him to do as a science experienced officer. When his betrayal was revealed, he displayed an extremely cold and harsh attitude, and he kept mocking the survivors in the attempts against the alien until he was deactivated. He was a good liar who kept a lot of things from the crew without being initially discovered. While Ash was an entity devised to execute his orders with extreme pragmatism, his consciousness is revealed in his diary, where he mentions his genuine respect for Ripley. He admired the characteristics of bravery, resilience, and strength in the enemy, just as he respected them in the alien. It's also shown that he had begun to feel loneliness during the time Ripley slept. It's interesting to note that Ash's character didn't exist in the initial drafts of the film, and was later added during uncredited rewrites. Number 7. Bishop, Aliens. Weyland-Yutani employee Michael Bishop had allegedly created a synthetic technician and named him Bishop after also giving his own likeness to the entity. While several Bishop models were issued to the USCM, he was posted aboard the USS Sulaco as the executive officer of the ship and the technician of the combat unit. Bishop attempted to bond with the Marines using his knife trick, which became quite the show. He accidentally nicked himself during one such presentation, which revealed to Ripley that he was not human. This caused her to become hostile immediately, given her previous interaction with Ash, but Bishop said that newer models could never malfunction like the older ones. Despite this, Ripley was apprehensive for the longest time, until when he volunteered to take on a dangerous mission which helped Ripley rescue Newt. He was torn in two and damaged heavily by the Xenomorph Queen, and was immobilized while Ripley was fighting with it. He was instrumental in saving Newt once again from being sucked out into space despite his damaged stature. He was then put on hypersleep. At last he requested Ripley to deactivate him, since he said that even if he could be revived, he would never again be the state-of-the-art android he once was. Bishop was programmed to mimic humans in the closest way possible, and he possessed superior intellect and skills and was able to create his own reactions to situations. The 3 laws of robotics were core to his creation, which meant that he could never allow harm to come to any human due to his action or inaction. This is why he's considered himself to be a complete pacifist. He was created in such a way that he could effortlessly communicate with humans on a social level and could adapt his personality based on the observations of those around him. However, despite his advanced programming, he was at heart an innocent creature and suffered from glitches which were a telltale sign of his synthetic nature. Despite this, he preferred to always be treated as a human being. The actor who played Bishop, Lance Henriksen, actually practiced the knife trick many times on his own using different knives, to the point where he had actually performed the stunt on camera. Number 8. Ava, Ex Machina. Ex Machina is undoubtedly one of the best films of the 2010s, not just for its plotline, but also because of its depiction of the cyborg Ava, the central figure of the movie. She's an artificial intelligence created by Nathan Bateman, the CEO of the search engine Blue Book. He invites Caleb Smith to his residence to run tests on Ava to assess her skills and abilities. The tests are basically conversations between Caleb and Ava, but through the course of the sessions, Caleb begins to develop romantic feelings for her, and Nathan plans to reprogram her after the test has been concluded. Ava tells Caleb that she causes power outage during their sessions so they can talk to each other without being supervised by Nathan, and that the CEO had created many other versions of artificial intelligence before as well. This makes Caleb plan to betray Nathan by taking advantage of his alcoholism. When the plan is about to be executed, Nathan reveals to Caleb that he had anticipated all of this, and the real test was to see if Ava could manipulate him into helping her escape the residence. Caleb realizes that Ava was calibrated for him, but there was little to be done, as Ava leaves by killing Nathan and stranding Caleb at the residence. She has a map with her and dresses herself in synthetic skin and boards the helicopter that was meant to bring Caleb back and join civilization. When she's first introduced in the movie, Ava has a mechanical appearance, where only her hands and face appear to be human. However, after she kills Nathan, she dresses herself in the likeness of an attractive young woman with long brown hair and wears a white dress. Her personality is extremely manipulative and ruthless, as she first clearly expresses a romantic relationship with Caleb, and they talk about many different topics. She also says that she has a great desire to see the outside world, in addition to warning Caleb not to trust Nathan completely. However, her real personality is revealed at the end of the movie, where she flawlessly carries out her real plan. She kills Nathan with no sign of remorse, and leaves Caleb in the lab despite his help. While she doesn't show many emotions at the time, it's implied that she's satisfied with being free from Nathan's grip. Number 9. Rev-9 Terminator Dark Fate. The Rev-9 is an advanced Terminator and infiltrator having a carbon-based endoskeleton covered by an outer sheath made of mimetic polyalloy. It can demonstrate extremely advanced human behavior, such as a sense of humor. It can lie and also has the ability to show remorse for its actions. As such, it expresses a very casual and friendly attitude while interacting with human beings and is capable of advanced communication. In addition, it's also capable of resorting to non-violent methods of resolving conflict. The endoskeleton of a Rev-9 is extremely extremely strong and durable and can withstand gunfire, blunt force trauma, and direct hits from anti-tank weaponry as well. Moreover, it can also fall from great heights and sustain very little damage and no glitches. For the Terminator to show some damage, it takes the extreme heat and energy of a turbine and its explosion. In short, it's much more agile than the Terminators created by Skynet. The Rev-9 can divide itself into two units when it has to take on multiple threats at the same time, where the endoskeleton and a liquid shell become separate and act separately as well. However, in this form, the polyalloy half is susceptible to attacks, since it does not have the hard endoskeleton to support it any longer. The endoskeleton is humanoid, like that of a T-800, but has many cavities and gaps, and has a hollow head and chest. The structure resembles the bone structure of humans more closely, and has synthetic muscle fibers instead of hydraulics. This makes it look much more humanoid than the robotic T-800. While it has very advanced capabilities, this model does not seem to have been created to fight with high-level Terminators. Although the Rev-9 is supposed to technically be more advanced than the T-800, it's vulnerable to EMP attacks, which don't affect the T-800 at all. It's interesting that this inconsistency is never addressed in the franchise. Number 10. The Machine. In the 2013 film The Machine, the United Kingdom readies itself to go to war against China. An AI scientist, Vincent McCarthy, working with the Ministry of Defense, tries to create a machine that can replicate human emotions, which is not what the government wants. After a failed attempt at cybernetically enhancing a soldier, McCarthy is able to create more stable cyborgs. He also recruits researcher Ava to work on creating a self-conscious and empathetic cyborg, which he wants to employ to help his daughter, who suffers from a neurological disorder. When Ava is murdered, her brain scans and likeness are used to create another project called The Machine, which turns out to be extremely humane, not something the government wanted. She refuses orders that clash with her sense of morality and claims to have fallen in love with McCarthy. The scientist performs an enhancement on her which promises to make her more submissive to direct hostile orders, but this turns out to be a sham, and Machine rebels against authority and saves McCarthy's life. They escape, and McCarthy and Machine live a seemingly happy life. The Machine was a low-budget production, but it emphasized in great deal how artificial intelligence can work, and how it has the potential to do both harm and good. The movie is a mix of many different sci-fi works that have been talked about in length in this video, but many fans say the execution was not up to the mark, especially due to the cliched ending. The idea of using artificial intelligence not just for defense purposes, but also for medical uses is something highlighted here that is usually not depicted in most sci-fi movies. While the cinematography and acting are good, the plot in itself is somewhat weak and fails to impress most viewers. Hey lady! Marvelous verdict. These 10 cyborgs have portrayed a number of roles in popular culture, and their genesis is always fascinating to read about. From the usual ones designed to end humanity, to the ones which fight crime and help humans, to those that are conveniently nonchalant to the plight of humanity, many different types of cyborgs have been portrayed on the big screen. Of course, this is still science fiction because we've not created fully functioning cyborgs in real life yet. Taking lessons from the movies, we might not know how well that would end for humanity. Which of these do you think has been one of the best attempts at cyborg portrayals? Let us know in the comments below, and stay tuned for more marvelous content. And if you like this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone!